Let's set the record straight. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Candace Taylor have stood before cameras with straight faces, claiming that the weather is being engineered by shadowy forces they can't quite name to destroy American lives and towns. But here's the truth. What has been engineered, generation after generation, is the destruction of Black communities and Black lives in this country, not by the weather, by racists, white supremacists, and policymakers in suits and hoods alike. And if we're going to talk about engineering, buckle up, because we're doing a series, The Engineering of Black America, where we trace the meticulous, ruthless, and intentional efforts to remove, erase, and replace people with melanin in their skin. This isn't random. It's design, it's policy, it's violence, and it's ongoing. Let's dive into Lake Lanier in Forsyth County, Georgia, a postcard-perfect place hiding a history soaked in smoke, blood, and water. It's where Oscarville once stood, and if you've ever floated across Lake Lanier, you may not know you're boating over the bones of a Black town where neighborhoods, a cemetery, businesses, and a school were buried by both mobs and government engineering. 1912 was the year terror ran through the streets of Oscarville and thus caused the fall of a thriving Black community. Oscarville was built in the late 1800s by newly freed Black families during Reconstruction. These weren't sharecroppers scraping by. Oscarville had blacksmiths, carpenters, farmers, and builders. It was a prosperous community when much of Georgia still staggered in post-Civil War poverty. Then came 1912. When a young white woman, May Crow, was found dead, white residents didn't wait for facts. They blamed 3 young Black men, Rob Edwards, Ernest Knox, and Oscar Daniel. Edwards was dragged from jail and lynched. Knox and Daniel were tried by all-white juries and publicly hanged. Then the real terror began. White mobs, known as the Night Riders, began torching Black homes, attacking families, and burning structures, specifically firebombing a church because it had become a sanctuary for residents fleeing terror. Over 1,000 Black citizens were forcibly driven from Forsyth County, their land stolen, abandoned, and seized. Among them was Bird Oliver, who owned 100 acres of land. His great-grandson, George Rucker, tells of the night his family fled. As they ran for their lives, chased by white mobs, they ran towards the river. When they reached the Chattahoochee River, they found they had no way forward. They had to make the horrendous choice of facing the wrath of the angry mob pursuing them, or they could jump into the river. The family collectively decided to jump into the river. Mothers, fathers, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends. Many drowned, lost to the river, and lost to the earthly world and to the country's history. They can deny the existence of Oscarville and even try to erase what happened there all those years ago. But what they can't do is erase the truth, because underneath Lake Lanier lies the flooded evidence. In the 1950s, the government used eminent domain to seize Oscarville's land to build Buford Dam and flood the area, creating Lake Lanier. This wasn't just a lake, it was a burial. The government removed the remains of marked graves from the cemetery, but they made no effort to preserve history. They drowned it because they could. After all, they probably thought the history of Oscarville would die along with the few survivors who made it out of the Chattahoochee River. Under the waters of Lake Lanier still sit trees, building foundations, and silenced stories. And here's the irony. Oscarville's displaced residents ended up in Gainesville, Georgia, where their agricultural genius laid the groundwork that eventually transformed that town into the poultry capital of the world. That's right, the same Black farmers who were run off their land built the industry that put another Georgia town on the map. Those same farming methods, cultivated by Oscarville residents, are still used in chicken houses today, which is why the United States has been and still is among the top 3 countries that exports chicken, fresh and frozen, in the world. Forsyth County wasn't just a place of one-time timber. It became a sundown county where Black people were warned, get out by dark or else. And they weren't joking. Up until the 1980s and even into the 2000s, stories circulated about Black folks being harassed, threatened, or worse after sunset. In 1987, civil rights legend Hosea Williams led a march through Forsyth with the freedom fighters. What greeted them? White mobs waving Confederate flags, shouting racial slurs, and a violent counter-demonstration that shocked the world. Members of the Ku Klux Klan and members of the nationalist movement physically assaulted Williams and the other marchers. A second march took place in Cumming, where Mrs. Coretta Scott King participated. Even Oprah came to Forsyth County, Georgia to confront the hate on national television. Let me say this plainly. Sundown towns weren't accidental. They were engineered environments, run by policy, enforced by violence, and upheld by silence. Sundown towns have existed in nearly every U.S. state, and not just in the South. Let's name a few. Forsyth County, Georgia, racial expulsion, fire bombings, sundown terror. Fruita, Colorado, passed an ordinance that banned Black people after dark until 1952. Darien, Connecticut, had real estate bans on Black and Jewish families. Vitter, Texas, where there is documented KKK activity, violence, segregated housing into the 1990s. Minden, Nevada, had a Sundown siren until 2023, targeting Native Americans. Goshen, Indiana, was a KKK stronghold. The town had signs warning Black travelers. Anna, 8 no N-word plural allowed, Illinois, was infamous for its racist acronym and exclusion. This is America's blueprint. This is what engineered erasure looks like. The story of Oscarville and the hundreds, if not thousands of others like it, is the real engineering of destruction. So when folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Candace Taylor scream about weather manipulation and engineered disasters, maybe they should turn their attention to this, because the real engineering in this country has been the deliberate dismantling of Black lives, land, and legacy. From Oscarville to Rosewood, from Tulsa to Wilmington, from sundown towns to red-line cities, this country has used everything from law books to bullets, to bulldozers to destroy what Black people built. And that's what this series, The Engineering of Black America, will uncover and expose. Because if we don't call it out, name it, and teach it, they'll keep pretending these things either didn't happen or were accidental. But they did happen and are not accidental, and we are putting folks on notice. We know better. We know better because our ancestors lived it, and many of us still are. Stay tuned for part 2. This is Sensible Sue signing off. Keep yourselves grounded and keep it sensible out there.